Let me tell you all the story. So back in college, I had a roommate, and me and my roommate would get crazy ideas, and we would just do them. No questions asked. We just jump right in. So this particular day, the PS4 was coming out, and we were out with some boys, and we were like, and he was just like, you know what? I'm gonna buy a PS4 right now. So we looked up, we found the closest GameStop to where we lived, called them up, asked them if they had any. They were like, yeah, we have some in stock. He said, when do you close? They were like, in 30 minutes. We were about roughly 30 minutes from the GameStop. So we were like, hey, if we get there within, 5 minutes of you closing, would you still let us purchase? And they said, you know what? Yeah, no problem. Thanks for calling. So we're on our way there. And a light turns red, but we see a gas station. And the way the gas station was, there was an opening here, but right here before the turn. So you drive up this way, you could turn in here or keep going straight to the light and then turn. But then on this side, there was another opening over here. So opening. We didn't want to get stopped for the red light, so he pulls into the gas station, pulls out the other way to dodge the light. Right as this happened, woo! Police officer pulls us over. So, I should also put this part in. He was part of what was like a Boy Scout to become a cop. So he, once a week would go to a meeting with a bunch of cops and they'd go over some stuff because that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to become a police officer. So he gets pulled over. The guy's like, hey, you can't do that. And gives him a ticket. But because he goes to this thing, the Boy Scout cop thing, he has to call and notify policing. Because I don't know if you know this, but when you're becoming a cop having a bunch of tickets, you can actually be told, no, you can't become a cop. So we call and we're like, hey, we didn't actually know that was illegal. I think at this point I'm maybe 21, maybe 20. And he's like 18, 19 because he was a year younger than me. Or 2 years younger than me, something like that. But yeah, so... And his leader literally says this exact statement. In all reality, everything you do is illegal. The only question is, will you get caught and prosecuted for it? And it's funny because that really struck with me. It stuck with me. Like, everything you do, for the most part, is illegal. It's just whether you're going to be disciplined for it. And I talk about this particular story because today I want to talk about the NFL. One of the biggest things in the NFL that you hear people say is, it's rigged, it's rigged, it's rigged, it's rigged. Because you see plays where people are clearly holding, or it's clearly pass interference, or clearly roughing the passer, and the refs don't throw flags. Now, if you're not a football fan, and you're looking and you're like, oh, this isn't for me, I'd wait, because I have a point with this that relates to everybody. Now, I heard an interview one time with a guy who used to ref, and he was talking about how, in all reality, every play there's a penalty. But if we throw a flag every play, the game would take 13 hours long, and we'd never actually get to enjoy the game. Now, is there biases? Maybe. Because I've heard players talk, and what we don't see as fans is the players talk to the refs, and they're like, hey, I've played this guy 90 times in my career, and every time he likes to grab up under my glove and kind of when you can't see, or he likes to be handsy, or he hits me extra hard. If quarterback's like, hey, he's really trying to hit me and hurt me. And the refs take this into account. And they can sometimes overcompensate or undercompensate. And to some degree, it's about who whines and complains the most to the refs. Now that can also backfire. The refs can be like, dude, this guy complains about everything, so we're going to ignore it. But saying that, there's two things that we don't take into account. One, we only find it rigged when it's against our team. And two, there's technically a penalty on every play, and they don't always call it. And to some degree, I get it. There's been bad plays. There's been times that you're like, how did they miss that? But sometimes you miss things that you didn't see. Like, for example, if a defensive back is holding a wide receiver, you might have not saw where that wide receiver pushed off of him. He held on, so the ref just doesn't throw a flag, because what's the point of throwing a flag when they were both hand fighting? And sometimes they just miss it. They're people. It's natural. But I find it funny when people say the NFL is rigged. Because I think of a story where a man was talking about how there were 12 people involved in Watergate. 12 of the most powerful men on the planet, right? And they couldn't keep a secret for that. But you're expecting these massive organizations that is now hiring a bunch of 20-year-old TikTok social media influencers who's all trying to make a name for themselves. And nothing's ever been leaked. Is there dirty stuff that happens in the NFL? I would probably say yes. But at the same time, the truth always comes out. We had Deflategate. That got leaked and eventually exposed. You had Bountygate. That got leaked. And these are just 52-man rosters. 2 organizations that couldn't keep it silent. So trying to say the entire NFL is in on it, I think that's just really hard to believe. But what is my point of this? Why does this relate to those who don't like sports? I think in life, we like to create narratives. And narratives are important. When we feel slighted, we want a reason. And I think some of that is due to what we watch. Every movie, every TV show, there's always a reason when people do stuff. It makes sense. It's controlled. But in the real world, sometimes things just happen. Oh, yeah. I also wanted to talk about this because I'm a big football fan. I'm a Steelers fan, guys. Those of you know, we're doing really good this year. But I started thinking about like my team and everything recently, and I realized sports movies are great. And I don't necessarily mean the sports part, but there's just something about watching, whether it's a sports movie like Remember the Titans or Friday Night Lights, or maybe a TV show like All American, or maybe an anime like Haikyuu. There is something inspirational. Now, that inspiration fades fast when you try it and you realize this is really hard. But there's something inspirational, something really cool about watching someone that dedicates their life to sports. And the reason I bring up my Steelers is because it's been a interesting, let's say, past 10 years for my team. And if it ends the way I'm hoping it ends, which for football fans, you know, they're looking for a Super Bowl, I feel like we might have one of the craziest, most inspirational movie plots you would think of. So, for all those future filmmakers out there, or TV show people, or even just books, maybe someone writes it in a really cool book. Let me give you some insight on what's going on. So, about 10 years ago, 2016, we have a squad, right? 2016 or 2017, and we're grinding. We go to the playoffs, and we have to play our division rivals, the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's a nasty game. Dirty hits, just straight up violent. But in that game, we lose our starting quarterback with a separated shoulder, and our star wide receiver due to a concussion from an illegal hit. The next game, we go to play the Denver Broncos, and you have this Peyton Manning who can barely move. His arm strength is gone, but he has a crazy defense coming to play us. Now we're down our two biggest stars. And these are actually two of the people that helped us beat them earlier in the season when people were like, oh, this team's unbeatable. So we go in there and we end up losing. Now this team goes on, wins the Super Bowl. But since then, we've been lousy. We're just not the same team. We had drama blow up in the locker room. We end up starting to trade away people. Everyone starts retiring. We keep our quarterback Ben Roethlisberger way too long until 2021, and by then he's just a shell of his old self. The league advances and moves forward, new talent, new stars, and now we've lost our franchise quarterback in 2021. We draft a rookie, and he's just not it. And everyone is like, the Steelers are dead in the water. Now, what I left out is, in this time, when most teams start having, 1-6 seasons, 1-17 season, they go 5-8, losing records, we're still getting winning records. We're making it to the playoffs. Now, we're not making it past the first round, but we're still in the thick of it, and we're still a top 20 team out of the 32. And no one understands why. They're like, how are they pulling this off? We just play some good defense and sound fundamental football. Now, come this year, beginning of this year, we go and get Russell Wilson, who was run out of Denver because they were like, we don't want him. We go grab Justin Fields, who was run out of Chicago because they're like, he sucks, we don't want him. The Ravens don't want to pay Patrick Queen, so we go get him. And we start... And over the last few years, we had started to get these island of misfit tour players, right? Players people were like, I don't think we want anymore. Release them. And at this point now, we are 8-2, first in our division, and looking like one of the tougher teams. What on earth is... What is that? I don't know what that is, guys. I'm going to keep this in too so you all can see it. I don't know if that's new to OBS, but if it is, let me know in the comment. That really threw me off, guys. But back to my point. We stayed diligent, and we stayed the course, and we didn't make rash decisions. And even when people were talking terrible, and I'll say I was one of them, I was starting to believe, like, man, we might need to get rid of our head coach. He just doesn't know what he's doing. Especially last year, I was like, this is terrible. What are we doing? I don't know what's going on. But I try to stick with him because I'm like, hey, he's a good coach. He's a good guy. He's a good motivator. For me, I started believing that maybe he's a really good leader, but not a great coach, because they're not the same things always. But it's paying off. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, we actually look like a legit contender. Now, it might all be for naught. We may get to the playoffs, lose round one again, and it's all over. But for the first time, you see some hope. Now, if you don't think that's a crazy and amazing story, I don't know what you think it is. I also say this because working on your fundamentals, being like the Mike Tomlin coach Steelers, of just playing sound fundamental football and progressing slowly but surely, it's kind of how it works for us filmmakers. It's kind of how it works for us people who want to get into the content world. I remember years ago when I would post a video and I get 0 views. 6 months go by, 7 months would go by, and the views just never seemed to come. And for a while I tried to, it's YouTube. But a few things. One, I can look back now and I'm like, those videos were terrible. I would watch them. 2, I didn't understand how YouTube actually worked. So over the last 5 years or so, I really broke into listening and studying and understanding how YouTube works. I took time off. I did a lot of sample stuff. I actually went from being a videographer back to the simplest base form of video, which is photography. And I tested, I messed around, I learned new AI tools. And I say all this because a lot of you need to start doing that. The people around you won't understand. They'll be like, you're wasting your time. Nothing's going to come of this. It's not going to... What are we doing? Are you ever actually going to make it? And I might not. But I'm putting in the effort. I'm taking the steps. I went out and I networked. I met a bunch of amazing people that do all sorts of content. And we talked and bounced ideas off each other. And I worked on the fundamentals. So I want to encourage all of you to start working on the fundamentals. And I want to encourage you to look at the world around you. Look at things that happen in real life. Because you can take those things and turn it into amazing scripts and movies. And try to inspire people with your work. There's so much fear-mongering content out there today. Especially if you watch like the news where it's always like, oh, everything's going to end. But for me, I don't want to do kind of content. I want to inspire with my content. I want to encourage people with my content. I want to feed into people and make them think like, hey, I can make a change in my life that can then affect someone else. I was actually talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about charity work. And we used to do a lot of it. Like, I'd help out at women's shelters. I'd help people move. I'd help, I've gone to places and cleaned people, single mothers' houses because they just needed a hand because life was so overwhelming. And I kind of missed doing it. I miss giving back. There's something refreshing about it. And it's not a, ego thing where it's like, you're just making me feel good. It's a thing of like, this is right. We've all had things that we do in life and like, this is just right. And I've gotten to hear great stories. I feel like those stories keep me humble and help me grow as a person. To realize that money is not everything, people are everything. And it also shows that the world's not as, or not the world, but people aren't as terrible as we think they are. Like, it's a small few that are really bad, and the ones that are just quieter out there. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. Any statements or comments or thoughts on anything I talked about today? Leave a comment down below. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications. And we will be back. I think I'm going to talk more football stuff. I'll keep you guys updated on my Steelers. And that will be all. Thanks for coming out again.